What's going on, Orange Nation? This is Neil Adler with another episode of Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. Happy Tuesday. Hope everyone's having a good week so far. Lots to unpack with Syracuse football. Got Duke at the Dome on Saturday. You think Syracuse is going to win that game? Drop me some comments. Let me know. I'm still mulling this one over. But we're going to start here with something that came out on Monday, and I'm sure all y'all saw it. Syracuse was fined $25,000 by the ACC in essence, faking injuries in their win over Clemson on the road this past Saturday afternoon. And to be honest with you, I'm okay with it. Um, is Syracuse the only team doing it? Probably not. Have other teams just not gotten caught, so to speak? I guess, maybe not. And I had a piece on Syracuse Central yesterday on Monday about Cade Klubnik, the Clemson quarterback, whining about Syracuse faking injuries. And I stand by what I said. I still think he was whining, but that doesn't mean he was wrong. But again, was Clemson doing that at all in this game? Did other ACC teams do it? Syracuse was accused of, in essence, of doing it against Tennessee. So, look, I support my alma mater and love my boys in Orange and cover the team. But if they're doing stuff they shouldn't be doing, then they got fined. They got a slap on the wrist, whatever you want to call it, and I'm fine with it. But like I said, I still stand behind what I said about Cade Klubnik. I think he was whining. I think that was sour grapes. You got beat. You had chances to score. You're 1 of 5 on fourth down, 3 of 13 on third down. So maybe if Syracuse faked injuries, did that slow momentum? Sure, could have. Does that mean Syracuse or Clemson would have won the game? I don't know. I don't want to sit here and play hypotheticals forever and ever. And Syracuse got caught and they got fined, and I'm cool with it. But the only thing I would say, it's kind of like when Jim Boeheim had 101 wins vacated. Uh, be consistent in terms of fines or vacating of wins. Vacating of wins, by the way, is stupid, but be consistent with these fines. And hopefully, Fran Brown is addressing it. Be curious what he thinks about it, but it is what it is. They got slapped on the wrist. Move on. Okay, so as we all know, word broke that Steve Angeli is out for the season with a torn Achilles, and obviously my heart breaks for that young man because he was having a great year and was really coming into his own the last couple of games. Was leading the country in passing yards heading into the Clemson game, and was playing well in the Clemson game, and he's out. So now Syracuse has to regroup, and they've got a different quarterback as QB1, and that's Ricky Collins Jr., the redshirt sophomore transfer from LSU. And do I think that Syracuse is a worse team with Ricky at the helm? I don't know. That remains to be seen. He had a touchdown pass against Clemson. I think he was like 3 of 8, so it wasn't like he was great. But it's not easy to just come into the game when you're cold, in terms of just not having reps and all that. And so it's thrust into a game at Death Valley. And but I thought he was serviceable. And what I'll say about Ricky is, he's more of a dual threat quarterback. He's got a really strong arm. Is he less accurate than Steve? We'll see. I don't know. Does he give Syracuse more of a rushing threat from the signal caller spot? Yeah, he does. He's a year younger. He doesn't have a lot of prior experience, just like Angeli didn't. It was a close quarterback competition ahead of the season, and Steve won out. He did have more college experience. He even played, well in part of a college football playoff semifinal game last year. So I wasn't surprised when Angeli ended up winning the competition, given some of those factors and kind of using that as context. But as I mentioned yesterday on Syracuse Central, there's not a big drop off. A lot of times when you have, a stud quarterback, starting quarterback, and then you have, a backup there's just this huge disparity in skill set. I don't think we have that here. But I'm curious who'll be, who'll be the primary backup. Um, when I had recorded this episode, I hadn't yet seen an official depth chart, but I assume it'll either be redshirt freshman Jakari Williams or true freshman Luke Carney. Um, neither of which has really virtually any experience. Jakari redshirted, and I think Luke has played. He played that one snap. Didn't he have like a 9-yard touchdown run against Colgate? Yeah. He came from a prep school in Dallas and threw up ridiculous numbers in his career there, won state titles and whatnot. But there's definitely, and this is no disrespect, but there's definitely a bigger disparity between Ricky Collins and either of those guys versus Steve Angeli to Ricky Collins, if that makes sense. So, I think Ricky, it's a tough position to be in, and he said some really nice things. He's called, Steve his brother and said it's, this sucks, and I totally agree. And he's handled the whole thing well, and now he's QB1, and I'm curious who QB2 will be. Drop me some comments. Let me know what you think. But they've got a challenge coming up at the Dome against Duke. Duke, they're 2-2, but I'm going to get into them in a minute here. But after beating Clemson, not that Clemson's necessarily any good, that gave me reason to believe, hey, maybe Syracuse can win 8 games or 9 games this year, even with that schedule. With Ricky at the helm, it's tough to say. Let's see how he plays in a full game. I'm not necessarily I think I picked Syracuse to go 7-5. I might have adjusted that, after the Clemson win if Angeli wasn't injured to maybe like 8-4 or even 9-3. But with Ricky, we just don't know yet. So I'm not gonna, I don't want to speculate about whether he's going to be good, bad, or somewhere in the middle. But I have confidence that the team can still have a good season with Ricky at the helm. Again, no disrespect, but if God forbid he got injured, I would be pretty concerned. And it's just because the other guys are younger and don't have experience. Ricky doesn't have game experience, but he is a redshirt sophomore. He's been in college 3 years. He backed up Garrett Newsomeyer. I hope I didn't butcher his name. The quarterback for LSU, and LSU's ranked, 3rd in the country right now? Second, no, Miami's second. I think they're 3rd. And before that, he backed up Jaden Daniels, who won the Heisman and plays in the NFL for one of my hometown teams, the Commanders. So, let's see how Ricky does. All right, so, I talk about these things, and I'm not like a huge betting person, but 2 days ago, let me just get my days right. 2 days ago, when I saw odds on, I think it was FanDuel, Duke was a 6.5-point favorite. And then when I looked on Monday, ahead of, the show today on Tuesday, Syracuse was a 5.5-point underdog. Now, I assume a lot of that has to do with Angeli being out for the season, but still, 5.5-point dog at home? Duke's 2-2. Duke is 2-2. They came back and beat previously undefeated NC State at home over the weekend. I'll give them that. But the last 2 weeks, they lost to Tulane. Tulane's quarterback had transferred to Duke. Mensa. I hope I'm not butchering his name. Probably am. And he's good, but they lost to Tulane, And then the week before that, they got blown out by Illinois, and Illinois just got blown out by Indiana. And so I'm doing the Kevin Bacon thing. But so I don't know. Is Duke really good? Should they really be a 5.5-point favorite on the road against a team that just beat Clemson handily and is 3-1? Again, new starting quarterback. I get it. I personally feel like, again, I'm not a betting person really at all, but I feel like if anything, this game should be like a pick'em or like a field goal one or the way or the other. I'm not saying Syracuse should be a big favorite either, but really? What do y'all think? Let me know what you think, because again, I'm not saying I'm like the foremost expert on on odds and all that stuff. So I don't know. It just seemed weird to me. 5.5 points, and maybe it'll change as the week goes on. We're only on Tuesday, but 5.5 points, really? All right, so what do y'all think about the ACC right now? Let me just grab a drink here. The ACC is interesting. Miami moved up to number 2 in the AP poll. They're undefeated. They beat Florida over the weekend. Their offense didn't look amazing, but their defense sure did. And they've got Florida State coming up here soon. Florida State's in the top 10. Georgia Tech's, I don't know if they were still 18 or somewhere around there. I think that's the only 3 in. And then you've got, I think Louisville was receiving votes. Syracuse was, I think, got 4 votes in the coaches poll, none in the AP. I was kind of surprised by that. Not that I care. If they keep winning, they'll get ranked. But 3-1, only lost to Tennessee at a neutral site. You don't even get a vote. Lame. But again, maybe part of that is based on the fact, again, that they have a different quarterback now. And their prior quarterback was leading the country in passing yards. So even though I don't think there's a big drop off between Ricky and Steve, or between Steve and Ricky, people factor that in. And if he looks amazing this weekend and they blow out Duke, then things will change. But again, my topic here is, can Syracuse win the ACC? Look, they play at Miami, they play at SMU, they play at Georgia Tech. They don't play Louisville. They've got Duke, Pittsburgh, BC, and North Carolina at home. North Carolina stinks. BC, Duke, maybe not bad. 2-2. Pittsburgh, I don't know. None of these teams scare me. Going to Miami will be tough, and going to Notre Dame, which is a non-conference game, even though they've had their early season struggles, that'll be tough too. I'm not saying Syracuse is going to win the ACC, but I do think that they could, assuming that they, knock on wood, remain relatively healthy, and Ricky is serviceable and plays well. Yeah, I think they could be up there. I'm not saying they're going to win, but I think they could be up there. So anyway, we'll see. It should be an interesting week. I'll be fascinated about this game coming up. Again, my heart breaks for Steve Angeli. He'll come back stronger. Injuries are part of sports, especially football. But, if we can keep obviously Ricky healthy, and, the both the offensive and defensive lines healthy and playing well. They've got a loaded wide receiver room. Willis is a beast. I think Will Nixon is an underrated running back. Secondary played well against Clemson. Special teams is solid. This is a good team. And I'd say that even if they weren't my alma mater. This is a good team. And Ricky Collins was a 4-star prep recruit, just like Angeli. So it hurts, but I think this team can still win 8+ games. I'm not saying they're going to win the ACC or go to the ACC title game. Let me know what you think. But I think, if they can get through this Duke game at home, this first game with Ricky under center as QB1, then they go to SMU, which is obviously a long road trip to Dallas. But SMU is 2-2. They don't scare me. Their defense is not good. So if they could get those 2 games under their belt, get to 5-1, Ricky feels comfortable. Who knows? Again, I'm not saying they're going to go to Miami and win. And if I had to say, I'd say that Miami, probably, and Florida State are the 2 best teams. And they go to Georgia Tech. Syracuse goes to Georgia Tech. Did I not mention that? I think I butchered that. Sorry. So their remaining road games, Miami, SMU, Georgia Tech, in ACC play, and then obviously Notre Dame. So look, they control their own destiny. Hey, look, I don't think that they're going to – I think they can win at SMU. And if they could win one of the 2 between at Miami and at Georgia Tech, that would be huge. Again, not saying they're going to win the ACC, but to have potentially a top 4 finish in the league again with, their backup quarterback, who, again, is not a big drop-off, but a backup quarterback for, 2/3 of the year, and that schedule, that'd be great. So let me know what you think. All right. I'm going to wrap up for today, friends. I appreciate you tuning in. Drop me comments about what you want to see in the show, what you like, what you don't like. And this is Neil Adler with Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. I hope you all have a great Tuesday. Tomorrow's hump day. I will talk to you again tomorrow, friends. Take care.